Your morning cup of tea isn't what you think it is. That cozy drink you're holding, maybe right now, could be loaded with things that don't belong anywhere near your body. When researchers looked at major American tea brands, what they found was shocking. Instead of clean, simple leaves, many brands were selling tea contaminated with pesticides, microplastics, and chemicals tied to fertility problems and even cancer. Some bags contain billions, yes, billions, of microscopic plastic particles that break off into hot water. Others contain pesticide residues banned in more than 140 countries. And what hurts the most is that many of these companies market themselves as natural, clean, wholesome, relaxing, or even wellness-based. I spent weeks digging into real lab results, lawsuits, FDA letters, recalls, and independent investigations. What I found would make most people pour their tea straight down the drain. That includes kid-friendly versions, bedtime teas, and boxes labeled with words like organic, pure, and 100% natural. In the next few minutes, you're going to see exactly which 7 tea brands cut corners, used the cheapest residues, added flavorings to cover low-quality leaves, and sold it to consumers who trusted them. By the end, you'll know which teas aren't worth finishing, and the 2 brands that actually deserve a spot in your kitchen. If you've got tea sitting in front of you while reading this, your opinion of that cup may change fast. Brand number 1, Celestial Seasonings. Celestial Seasonings looks harmless from the outside. That sleepy bear, the soft bedtime colors, the 100% natural printed right on the box, it gives you comfort before the first sip. That branding has been in American homes for decades. Parents give it to kids before bed. People with anxiety or gut issues switch to herbal tea believing it's safer than soda or coffee. For a long time, nobody questioned it. Then independent lab testing tore that reputation apart. In 2013, a major lawsuit exposed pesticide contamination in Celestial Seasonings teas. The most painful part wasn't that pesticides were found. It was how often they showed up and how high the levels were. One test showed that 91% of Celestial Seasonings teas exceeded federal safety limits for pesticide residues. Not borderline levels, not traces, over the allowed limit. The worst shock involved the children's line. Sleepy-time kids and goodnight grape tea tested positive for propacla, a pesticide listed under California's Proposition 65 as a carcinogen. To make it even clearer, that means California officially recognizes that chemical as capable of increasing cancer risk. And yet this was inside tea marketed specifically for young children. Parents weren't giving their kids sugar-filled drinks. They weren't giving soda. They thought they were doing something safe, warm tea before bed. Instead, they were unknowingly serving tea contaminated with a compound linked to cancer risk. It didn't stop there. Celestial's wellness teas, aimed at adults who wanted better digestion, a stronger immune response, or calmer sleep, tested positive for propagite, another cancer-linked compound also classified as a developmental toxin. The problem wasn't just contamination. It was the branding. These teas were sold with labels that implied healing, safety, naturalness, and purity. That gap between marketing and reality is what triggered the lawsuit. The plaintiffs argued that no reasonable consumer would expect pesticides associated with cancer to be inside anything labeled 100% natural. And they were right. You don't pay premium prices expecting chemical residues. Yet that's exactly what buyers got. What makes this worse is that Celestial Seasonings never denied the findings. They never said the pesticides weren't there. Their defense was that when tea is brewed, the chemicals dilute, so the drink technically meets acceptable limits. Think about that logic. If poison is more spread out, it becomes acceptable. That's like saying if an ounce of bleach is diluted into a swimming pool, it becomes fine to drink. It may not hurt you instantly, but it has no business being there. This wasn't the first red flag. Even before that lawsuit, the FDA issued warning letters about quality control failures. When a federal agency warns you multiple times, the issue isn't accidental, it's systemic. Fast forward to today. Same branding. Same natural promise. Same mass-produced supply chain. Nothing meaningfully changed. For families who used Celestial Seasonings when they wanted something gentle and safe, especially for kids, the truth is hard to swallow. For people with autoimmune conditions thinking herbal tea would keep them away from chemicals, you didn't avoid anything. Celestial Seasonings built trust on bedtime calmness and wholesome imagery. But when independent testing exposed what was actually inside the bag, the packaging stayed the same and so did the profits. If you have that box sitting in your cabinet, look at it differently. The smiling bear is still there. The chemicals never had a label. Brand number 2, Lipton. Lipton is the most trusted tea name in America. Your grandmother probably drinks it. Restaurants serve it by default. It's the brand that looks safe because it's been around forever. But when researchers dug into it, what they found wasn't just disappointing, it was disturbing. In 2012, Greenpeace purchased Lipton tea directly from supermarket shelves and sent it for independent laboratory testing. Every single sample, 100% of them, was contaminated. Not just one tea. Not just one flavor. Every blend they tested contained pesticide residues, many of which are banned in multiple countries due to health risks. Some bags contained between 3 and 17 different pesticides in a single serving. Think about that. 1 cup of tea holding 17 separate agricultural chemicals. That's not tea leaves with residue. That's a chemical cocktail. Some of the pesticides detected are banned in the US. Some banned in Europe. Some are banned in China. Ironically, China is where most Lipton tea is sourced. So how does a pesticide end up in a product that should be boiled, steeped, and safely consumed? Because cheap tea farming relies heavily on constant spraying. Tea leaves aren't washed before drying. Whatever chemicals hit those leaves stay, even after processing. But pesticides weren't the only issue. Lipton's premium pyramid bags, the ones that look upscale and modern, are made from plastic, not paper. And when hot water hits plastic, something dangerous happens. Researchers at McGill University tested plastic tea bags under boiling water. Result: one Lipton-style plastic bag released over 11 billion microplastic particles and more than 3 billion nanoplastic particles into a single cup. These particles are so small they bypass normal filtration pathways in the body. Studies have already detected them in human blood, lung tissue, and even the placentas of newborn babies. That's not theoretical risk. That's physical evidence. Lipton never denied this. They shifted toward phrases like, safe within current regulatory standards. Policies written decades ago never anticipated microscopic plastic residue dissolving into boiling water daily. But that's still not the worst part. Lipton doesn't use whole tea leaves. They use tea dust, the leftover fragments swept from processing floors after premium leaf sorting is done. That dust has almost no flavor on its own, so artificial natural flavors are added. Most people assume natural flavor means fruit, herbs, real extracts. In reality, they are lab-made compounds designed to mimic those flavors. That lemon tea? No real lemon. That berry? No fruit ever touched it. It's aroma chemistry, not agriculture. Then there's the human cost. Investigations have shown plantations supplying Lipton rely on extremely low worker wages. In some regions, children participate in harvesting. Workers have been documented spraying pesticides without gloves or masks. Cheap tea doesn't happen because the product magically costs less. Cheap tea happens because someone pays the price somewhere else. Lipton is owned by Unilever, a global corporation worth over $100 billion. They easily could afford clean sourcing, independent testing, and transparent labeling. But choosing purity over profit would raise their costs, and possibly lower their margins. For seniors who've brewed Lipton for decades, understand something important. The exposure wasn't 1 cup. It was thousands over a lifetime. For parents who serve iced Lipton at family gatherings, especially during summer, that familiarity wasn't safety. It was repetition. For people who assume longevity equals integrity, it doesn't. Lipton isn't the biggest because they deliver the best tea. They're the biggest because they sell the cheapest tea mass-produced at scale. If you open your pantry and see a yellow Lipton box sitting there, it is not harmless tradition. It's likely contaminated tea dust inside a dissolving plastic bag. That's the reality behind America's most trusted tea. Brand number 3, Teavana. Teavana wasn't sold as ordinary tea. It was marketed like a lifestyle upgrade, a clean, exotic, luxury experience inside a glass jar. If you ever walked into a Teavana store when they were still open, you remember the smell, the wellness atmosphere, the sampling area, the handcrafted labels, the employees speaking in calm tones about whole leaf purity. People didn't buy Teavana because it was cheap. They bought it because it felt superior. Until lab testing exposed what was actually inside. When independent tests were done, 100% of Tivana teas sampled showed pesticide contamination. Not some of them. Not half. Every single blend tested. One product, monkey-picked oolong, contained 23 different pesticides in a single tea. Let that sink in. A product marketed as rare, premium, exotic, handpicked, and healthy had 23 separate agricultural chemicals blended into it. And it gets worse. European regulators looked at Tivana's teas and found that 77% would be rejected at the border, too contaminated to import into Europe. Meaning what was unsafe to sell there was perfectly legal to serve to Americans at mall kiosks, premium tea bars, and grocery aisles. Even more disturbing. 62% of Tivana products contained endosulfan. If you've never heard that name, here's why you should. Endosulfan is banned in the United States, the European Union, China, Japan, and 140+ countries. Why? Because it damages reproductive organs. It harms developing babies. It disrupts hormones. It has been connected to neurological damage. This is not mild exposure risk. This is high-toxicity contamination. And yet, Tivana sold these teas to pregnant women looking for something safe, parents wanting caffeine-free options, people switching to tea to avoid chemicals, wellness consumers who trusted premium packaging. Most assumed higher price meant better quality. Instead, higher price covered marketing. Then Starbucks entered the picture. When Starbucks purchased Tivana in 2012 for $620 million, people assumed this huge corporate buyout meant quality would increase. More oversight. Better supply chain control. Better testing. It did not. The contamination didn't decrease. The sourcing didn't change. The transparency never improved. Eventually, Starbucks closed all 379 physical Tivana stores. News headlines made people think the brand was dead. But here's the part most Americans never realized. The tea never stopped being sold. Starbucks still sells Tivana products today. In their bottled iced teas. As passion tea in stores. In tea lattes. In grocery aisles. Same product. Different presentation. What changed wasn't the tea, it was the storefront. The contamination wasn't solved, it was buried. The lawsuits didn't force reform. The stores closed quietly and dissolved. Meanwhile, the teas themselves stayed in circulation, still labeled premium, still marketed as wellness, still ordered at cafes where no one questions ingredients. For wellness buyers, who were willing to pay extra for honesty and purity, Tivana proved that premium price can still hide toxic sourcing. For pregnant women who chose Tivana believing they were making the safest possible choice, the reality is heartbreaking. For anyone who trusted Starbucks because they are strict about quality, the truth is simple. They protected the business value, not the product safety. Tivana built a brand on luxury and purity, but the facts reveal one of the most contaminated tea lines ever put in American retail. If Starbucks tea is something you order weekly, it matters what's inside that cup. The stores disappeared. The brand dissolved. But the same questionable tea is still changing hands today. Brand number 4, Bigelow. Bigelow has always positioned itself as the safe, American alternative, family-owned, 3 generations, a name passed down like a recipe. Your mother probably bought it because it felt trustworthy. The box has American flags, family photos, and language suggesting heritage and goodness. But when the product was tested, that image collapsed. In 2017, independent laboratory testing found glyphosate in Bigelow's classic green tea. Not residue from nearby fields, actual detectable contamination inside the product. Glyphosate is the active ingredient in Roundup, the weed killer at the center of thousands of lawsuits where plaintiffs claimed exposure caused cancer. People avoid spraying Roundup around their kids. People keep it away from pets. Yet the same chemical was inside a tea marketed as all-natural. The Organic Consumers Association filed a lawsuit, and instead of denying the results, CEO Cindy Bigelow dismissed the case as frivolous. But she didn't say the tea was clean. She didn't challenge the findings. Her defense was simply that when the tea is brewed and diluted, the levels become absolutely zero. Think about what that implies. Not that the tea is pesticide-free. Not that the product is clean. Just that once you thin it out in hot water, it's low enough to not show up on test instruments. That's like saying contaminated water is safe if you add enough ice. And it wasn't just glyphosate. The tea quality itself raises issues. Open a box of Bigelow and smell it. It's flat. Stale. Because most of their tea is stored in warehouses for long periods before reaching shelves. Real tea naturally degrades, losing oils, flavor, and antioxidants over time. That fast deep amber color when hot water hits? That's typically dust, not whole tea leaves slowly unfurling. That flavor you taste disappears quickly because there is nothing complex left. What people assumed was a premium product was simply tea dust packaged with impressive printing. Then there's the label most people misunderstand. Manufactured in the USA. What Bigelow doesn't highlight is this. The ingredients are not grown in the USA. Ingredients come from China, India, Sri Lanka. The same industrial tea farms that supply cheaper brands. The only thing in the US is the packaging. So what was marketed as American tea was the same imported commodity product everyone else sells, just wrapped in a family story. And that family story worked. Bigelow became the safe tea people bought when they wanted something non-corporate. It became the tea people trusted for their kids. It became the tea people served when they wanted quality without risk. All while independent tests detected Roundup-linked chemicals. For people with autoimmune conditions, liver issues, or chronic inflammation, the exposure matters more because your body doesn't filter toxins efficiently. For families who bought Bigelow because it felt like the cleanest choice, what they trusted was a brand narrative, not ingredient quality. And here's the part most consumers never noticed. As lawsuits, recalls, and contamination findings hit the industry, Bigelow kept the same packaging, the same claims, the same supply chain. They changed nothing. Because the average shopper never reads legal filings or test reports. They see a family name. They see heritage. They see American flags. But what sits inside the bag isn't any safer than the brands without that story. The truth is simple. Bigelow built trust using identity and nostalgia. The actual product never lived up to that image. The family brand wasn't protecting families, it was protecting sales. If Bigelow is in your cabinet right now, it's worth questioning whether that trust ever came from the tea itself, or just the box it came in. Brand number 5, Yogi. Yogi built its brand on calmness, spirituality, and wellness. The box looks peaceful. The fonts look earthy. The inspirational tea tag quotes make you feel like you're doing something gentle for your body. And when people want something organic, clean, and herbal, Yogi is one of the first names they reach for. That image shattered in May 2024. That's when Yogi voluntarily recalled nearly 900,000 tea bags nationwide, specifically their Echinacea Immune Support blend. Think about the irony. A tea marketed for immune strength was recalled because it contained pesticide residues that weaken immune function. Not a few boxes. Not a single batch. Almost 1 million bags. Echinacea is something people take when they are sick, vulnerable, or run down. New moms drink it when they feel a cold coming. Seniors drink it during flu season. People recovering from illness drink it for support. Instead, contaminated ingredients were going into mugs marketed as health boosters. The FDA classified this recall as Class 3. That doesn't mean safe, it means not likely to cause immediate, obvious health consequences. Which also means those consequences may show up later. Here's where it gets even worse. Yogi is a certified organic brand. Their website proudly claims over 40 certified organic teas. Clean sourcing. Non-toxic ingredients. So how does an organic tea get contaminated? Their public explanation. We exist within a complex supply chain network where not everyone values organic practices the same way we do. Translation. Our suppliers cheated, and we still sold the product. Because if the tea was tested before shipping, contamination would have been caught before it reached stores. If the tea was tested before packaging, the recall would have happened privately, not after nationwide distribution. So what about that USDA organic stamp? What does it really guarantee? Not that each bag was independently tested. Not that farms followed protocols perfectly. Not that contaminants weren't present. It guarantees paperwork, not purity. And here's something most people never consider. Organic certification does not prevent pesticide drift from neighboring fields, contaminated soil, cross-silo storage, shared drying equipment, polluted irrigation lines. Your tea can be legally organic on paper and contaminated in reality, which is exactly why that recall happened. Families who paid extra thinking organic meant clean, safe, tested, discovered that certification alone is not protection. Meanwhile, Yogi's branding continues to rely on emotional positioning. Healthy, spiritual, mindful, natural. But when independent testing and FDA action strip the illusion away, what's left is a brand whose marketing promises exceed its actual quality control. For parents buying Yogi thinking they're protecting their kids' health, this is a wake-up call. For anyone who switched to Yogi after ditching sodas and chemical-heavy drinks, what you avoided may have re-entered your body through that tea bag. For shoppers who believed organic labels meant testing, now you know testing doesn't come with that stamp. The quotes on the tag may uplift your mind. The pesticides inside the bag don't uplift anything. Brand number 6, Tetley. Tetley is one of those brands that blends quietly into the background. No dramatic advertising, no luxury image, no premium wellness claims. Just a familiar blue box that's been around for generations. Because of that, people assume Tetley is safe, simple, and basic, nothing to worry about. But when investigators actually tested Tetley, what they found was shocking. In a major Canadian consumer investigation, CBC Marketplace sent several tea brands to a government-approved laboratory. They didn't use random testing methods. They used the same analytical standards regulators themselves use. The results were published publicly, and Tetley's numbers stood out for all the wrong reasons. Tetley tea contained 22 different pesticides in a single sample of tea. Not across their product line. Not scattered among different boxes. One bag. 1 cup. 22 agricultural chemicals. And here's the real problem. Regulatory systems test pesticides one at a time. If each one individually falls under the allowable limit, companies are allowed to sell the product. But that's not how tea is consumed. If one chemical is at 90% of the limit, and another is also at 90%, and another is at 70%, and another at 60%, individually they may pass. But the combined exposure isn't measured, and no one has ever studied what happens when these chemicals interact inside your body. There is no research on how pesticide cocktails behave in long-term daily consumption. Yet Tetley sells that combination for $3 to $4 a box. Here's the disturbing part. Some of the chemicals found were not just controversial. They were already banned. The lab detected monocrotophos, banned years ago due to neurological toxicity. DDT, banned since 1972 because of deadly ecological damage. DDT was removed from agriculture over 50 years ago because it harmed entire ecosystems. There is no legitimate reason it should appear in a tea bag in 2024. So how did it get there? Because Tetley sources tea from industrial plantations in regions where banned chemicals may still be circulating in soil. Old stockpiles get reused illegally. Environmental persistence makes residues last for decades. Spraying practices are poorly regulated. Suppliers cut costs with cheaper chemicals. And here's the most misleading part. Tetley's official response was that their tea complies with all food safety standards. That doesn't mean it's safe. It means the standards are outdated. Regulations never imagine pesticide accumulation across dozens of chemicals. Laws only evaluate single chemical exposure. That's why Tetley can legally sell tea that contains multiple toxic agents, all under acceptable levels individually. But real families aren't consuming one chemical at a time. They are consuming mixtures at once. Morning cup. Lunchtime cup. Nighttime cup. Multiply that by years. Multiply that by age-related vulnerability. Multiply that by weakened detox systems. Multiply that by children drinking iced versions. Tetley knew the laws would protect them from accountability. The industry knows multi-chemical exposure isn't regulated. And consumers trust the familiarity of the brand. A simple blue box. A cheap price. A legacy name. But behind that familiarity lies some of the worst contamination ever found in a mainstream tea. If Tetley is in your pantry, understand this clearly. The problem isn't one ingredient. The problem is the combination. 22 toxins don't belong in a $4 box, or in your bloodstream. Brand number 7, Twinings. Twinings sells prestige. The packaging looks refined. The fonts look elegant. The brand carries over 300 years of heritage. And they use the phrase royal warrant, signaling that their products are served to the British royal family. When people buy Twinings, they are not just buying tea, they are buying status, cleanliness, tradition, and an emotional promise of quality. But when tea samples were independently tested, Twinings showed some of the worst contamination levels in the industry. Across multiple investigations, over 30 different pesticide residues were detected in Twinings products, the highest count among major brands tested. Some contaminants were traceable, others significant. But the sheer volume alone raises an obvious question. How does a company with royal branding have the most contaminated tea? Look closely and it becomes clear. Their everyday line, the one most Americans actually purchase, is made using commodity-grade leaves, bulk-sourced materials, aging stock that has been stored long before packaging. These are the same raw materials cheaper brands use, just wrapped in premium symbolism. Now, let's talk about the specific chemicals detected. Among them were cypermethrin, a neurotoxin affecting nerve signaling; chlorpyrifos, linked to reduced IQ and developmental delays in children; imidacloprid, known to devastate bee populations. One common denominator across these chemicals is neurological impact, not just irritation, but measurable developmental harm. Think about who drinks Twinings. Older adults, pregnant mothers, children having herbal blends, individuals switching from soda or coffee, people seeking refined health choices. Then consider that some of the chemicals found are banned for agricultural use in multiple nations. Twinings also uses tea dust, not consistently whole leaves. Dust extracts color instantly. Dust dissolves too fast. Dust carries residues because it's often collected from broad regions with inconsistent standards. And then the packaging itself becomes part of the contamination. Those bleached bags? They are whitened using chlorine-based compounds. When hot water passes through them, chemical residue leaches into the tea. You sip it, assuming purity, while bleaching byproducts dissolve into the water. Think about it. Tea is one of the few foods people consume unfiltered, unwashed, and heated at high extraction temperature. Whatever is in that bag goes into your system directly. Then there's the age factor. Tea is supposed to be consumed fresh, within months of harvest. Twinings tea often sits for months in international warehouses, additional months at packaging sites, then months on store shelves. Imagine strawberries aged a year still being called premium. That's essentially what consumers are paying for. The difference? Strawberries mold visibly. Tea just loses integrity silently. So how did Twinings keep the premium image? Two things. British identity, royal association. Neither of which has anything to do with testing individual batches. Now consider the reality. Twinings charges $6, $7, sometimes $8 per box. While sourcing the same contaminated leaves used for $2 store-brand tea. That's not paying for quality. That's paying for reputation. For the health-conscious buyer, here's the real fallout. If you switched from coffee to Twinings thinking you were doing something healthier, the contamination doesn't align with that intention. If you brewed Twinings chamomile for your child because it seemed gentle, that bag may have held compounds you'd never intentionally give them. If you bought Earl Grey because the aroma felt premium, know that the bergamot taste likely wasn't citrus at all, it was a manufactured flavor extract. Twinings built itself on tradition and refinement. But today's product is not refinement. It's recycling of industrial supply chain leftovers, disguised with classic fonts and royal symbolism. If that box is sitting in your cabinet, remember, prestige on the label does not protect the contents. That's what the tests revealed. Transition to safe options. At this point, you've seen the reality behind 7 of America's most trusted tea brands. Not small brands. Not unfamiliar names. These are the boxes sitting in millions of kitchens today, steeped every morning, served to children at night, offered to guests after dinner, gifted during the holidays, and purchased with genuine intention to stay healthy. And here's the truth most people never consider. Tea doesn't go through the same washing process that fruits or vegetables do. Whatever was sprayed on those leaves stays on them. Then hot water dissolves it directly into your bloodstream. Unlike most foods, tea bypasses rinsing, scrubbing, and cooking that might reduce residue. You steep it. You swallow it. Your body carries it. If there are 10 chemicals, you ingest all 10. If there are 22, they all enter your system. Unlike pesticides in produce, where exposure varies, tea is direct transfer. That's why these findings matter. Not because contaminants occasionally exist, but because repeated exposure compounds. Daily drinkers aren't drinking one bad cup. They are drinking thousands over years. And here's what makes the industry more concerning. Testing often focuses on brewed tea, not raw leaves. Meaning if contamination dilutes to a measurable fraction in water, companies use that as justification to continue. It's the equivalent of saying, if you drink poison slowly enough, it's acceptable. Your body doesn't see dilution. Your organs see accumulation. Now, to be clear, not all tea is compromised. Two companies have proven something the industry denies. You do not need pesticides. You do not need plastic bags. You do not need artificial flavoring. You do not need chemical bleaching agents. You only need real leaves, clean sourcing, honesty. And ironically, those companies aren't charging for prestige. They are not royalty branded. They are not multinational giants. They are not hiding behind organic certification or vague proprietary blends. They are simply doing what tea was always meant to be: whole leaves, clean soil, transparent sourcing, independent lab verification. And now that you've seen the problem, let's talk about the two brands that are actually worth buying. Not perfect, not trendy, just clean. Safe pick number 1, Numi Organic Tea. Numi doesn't need celebrity endorsements, spiritual slogans, or glossy marketing campaigns. The reason their name stands out is simple: they earn trust through proof, not packaging. Every single batch of Numi tea goes through third-party verification. Not in-house testing. Not company-funded labs. Independent laboratories with published results. That alone puts them in a category most other brands can't enter because they'd fail those tests. Open a box of Numi and you'll notice something immediately: the smell isn't artificial. That jasmine tea actually smells like jasmine because real jasmine flowers were laid across the tea leaves during curing. Not sprayed oils. Not extract. Real flower infusion. Their Earl Grey doesn't taste like bergamot because of natural flavorings, which are often lab-engineered compounds. It tastes like bergamot because the tea leaves were actually aged with bergamot citrus. That's what clean tea is supposed to be. Now look at the way their product brews. If you steep most low-grade tea, it turns brown instantly. That's dust dumping whatever is left of the leaf into the water all at once. Numi behaves differently. You drop the bag in, and the color builds slowly. You see the leaf unfurl, not dissolve. You smell depth, not sharp aroma bursts. That slow release is the sign of whole leaves, not what factories sweep from the floor. And then there's the bag itself. Numi uses manila hemp, plant-based fiber. Meaning, no microplastics. No polypropylene sealants. No melting polymer fragments. No nylon dissolving in boiling water. Science has already shown microplastics accumulate inside the human body. Blood samples confirmed it. Brain tissue confirmed it. Even the placentas of unborn babies confirmed it. Numi avoids that completely. Then comes sourcing. Numi doesn't hide behind vague regions like Asia. They identify the actual farms. They visit them. They audit them. Most tea companies never meet the farmers who grow their ingredients. They buy from global aggregation warehouses. Bulk supply. No accountability. Numi does the opposite. On top of that, their products are fair trade certified. Meaning workers are not paid pennies, not harvesting without safety gear, not inhaling pesticide drift. This matters because clean product requires clean supply chains. When you remove chemical spraying, plasticized packaging, artificial flavoring, long-term warehouse aging, you get what tea is meant to be: leaves, heat, and time. A box of Numi costs around $6 to $8 in most stores. That's a few dollars more than cheap brands, but far less than medical bills tied to decades of contamination. Paying extra is not luxury. It's protection. You're not buying royalty branding. You're not buying lifestyle marketing. You're buying absence of contamination. For families who drink tea every day, this is the difference between ritual and risk. For people with autoimmune conditions, thyroid problems, kidney strain, or chemical sensitivity, clean sourcing isn't preference, It's survival. For parents giving tea to kids, this is the choice that actually keeps them safe. Numi doesn't pretend. Numi doesn't soften truth with slogans. Numi delivers what others claim to deliver. Clean leaves. Tested results. Nothing hidden inside the bag. That's why Numi belongs in your cabinet. Safe pick number 2, traditional medicinals. Traditional medicinals isn't trying to be trendy, spiritual, or luxurious. They were created with one purpose: tea that actually supports health, not tea that simply tastes nice or looks wholesome on a shelf. And they take that responsibility seriously. Unlike most brands that rely on marketing language such as natural, pure, or clean, traditional medicinals backs up their claims with actual pharmaceutical level standards. Their herbs are tested to pharmacopoeia grade. That's not food grade. Not farm grade. Pharma grade. Meaning the same purity standards used for herbal compounds that go into FDA-regulated supplements and natural medicines. When you open a box of their throat coat, smooth move, chamomile, or ginger, you're not smelling artificial fragrances. You're smelling real botanicals, actively potent, not decorative. And then look closely at how they structure quality control. They test for heavy metal residues, for pesticide contamination, for microbial growth, for mold presence, for solvent contamination. Most tea companies only test for mold levels once the product reaches a warehouse. Traditional medicinals tests before that. Because their product is meant to be therapeutic, not recreational. And now, compare their actions to Yogi's recall. While Yogi pulled nearly 1 million contaminated bags off the market in 2024, traditional medicinals continued passing verification tests. Why? Because they never pushed weak supply chains. They never relied on questionable growers. They never outsourced purity to assumptions or paperwork. They built their supply chain around purpose, not profit margin. Their tea bags themselves are different. Unbleached abaca fiber. No dioxins. No chlorine compounds. No polypropylene sealing fibers melting into boiling water. When water hits the bag, nothing dissolves except tea. That's how it should be. Their herbs work because they actually contain real concentrations of active compounds. Try their throat coat when you're sick, and it doesn't taste soothing. It physically coats the throat because real slippery elm and licorice root oils extract during steeping. Try their ginger or chamomile for stomach issues, and it helps because there's actual therapeutic payload, not leftover leaf powder sprayed with flavor. Traditional medicinals cost about the same as Twinings or Tivana used to. But the difference is this. Twinings sells processed dust disguised as sophistication. Traditional medicinals sells tested botanicals with measurable effects. And for people over 50, people with chronic illness, thyroid issues, autoimmune symptoms, or digestive problems, this difference matters more. When tea becomes medicine, contamination becomes harm. When tea becomes part of a daily health ritual, absence of toxins matters. For parents giving tea to children, especially when sick, the safety margin needs to be real, not printed. For seniors who use herbal tea because they can't tolerate medication side effects, they need certainty, not branding. Traditional medicinals is the rare company that treats tea like something going inside a vulnerable body, not something filling a shelf space. They don't talk purity, they demonstrate it. They don't imply wellness, they deliver it. They don't rely on slogans, they rely on lab evidence. This is what tea was supposed to be. Real herbs. Real function. Real safety. No dilution excuses. No pesticide drift excuses. No marketing illusion. If your tea is part of your health routine, traditional medicinals deserves that place. Because in a market full of shortcuts, they chose integrity, and kept it. You've now seen the truth most people never discover, not because it's hidden, but because no one expects tea to be dangerous. It feels gentle. It feels comforting. It looks harmless sitting in a warm mug. But what we uncovered proves something important. Familiarity doesn't equal safety. For years, millions of Americans have purchased tea thinking they were choosing the healthier path. They switched away from soda, sugary drinks, artificial juices, and chemical-loaded beverages, only to end up consuming pesticide residues, plastic particles, chemical solvents, and synthetic flavor extracts steeped directly into boiling water. And unlike fruits or vegetables, you don't rinse tea leaves. There's no washing step. There's no heat sterilization beyond steeping. Whatever is on that leaf dissolves directly into your body. If you drink tea daily, you're not drinking one contaminated cup. You're drinking thousands over time. That's why so many people feel betrayed when they discover what's inside their favorite box. Now contrast that with the two brands that actually do things correctly. Numi, whole leaves, independent testing, no plastic bags, botanical infusion built from real ingredients, not lab-made natural flavors. Traditional medicinals, pharmaceutical standard herbs, tested for metals, pesticides, microbes, mold, and purity, because they treat tea as medicine, not decoration. That's the difference between safety and marketing. The disappointing truth is blatant. All natural means nothing unless tested. Organic doesn't protect you from contaminated suppliers. Premium doesn't guarantee quality. Family-owned doesn't guarantee purity. Royal heritage doesn't guarantee safety. A logo can be pure. A slogan can be pure. Your tea bag must be pure. Right now, look at whatever tea is sitting in your cabinet. Open the box. Read the brand. Ask yourself one simple question. Did they earn your trust? Or did they simply package it? Because the brands exposed today never lacked revenue. They lacked accountability. Numi and traditional medicinals proved that clean tea is possible. And if they can do it, everyone else could, if they cared enough. Your morning cup shouldn't be a risk. It should be peace. So if this opened your eyes or made you check your pantry differently, that's exactly why we walk through these deep dives. Because when labeling games stop, when marketing fades, and when real quality stands alone, you see what the industry never wanted revealed. Stay sharp. Read labels. Pay attention to sources. Your body deserves better than boiled pesticides and dissolving plastic. And now, you know exactly where to find better.